All right, now we're there. TNCRadio.live. This is Building Strong Minds with Dr. Christopher Portman. I'm Tom Kelly. We'll be with you for the next hour talking about the social black belt. We've been talking about this for a few weeks, and I've enjoyed this conversation, learning a lot. Dr. Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit, what is the social black belt?
Well, good evening, Tom, and everyone else. I hope you're all having a good week. I am once again privileged to be here to share these ideas and something really helpful to a lot of people, the social black belt, just basically a concept is all it is. It's predicated upon the martial arts notion of a black belt, which means you have the highest level of training. You don't look for trouble, but you could handle whatever comes your way. So my fantasy was, what if we could create a social black belt? That is, you have the highest level of training in terms of being able to deal with issues in your life, with people, with your emotions, understanding your behavior, recognizing how to set boundaries with others, dealing with grief, dealing with loss, dealing with trauma. If you had those kinds of skills, perhaps you could earn a social black belt, as it were. So a number of years ago, I wrote a book, Your Mind and Owner's Manual. And that book was used in some schools for people like freshmen in high school to try to give them these skills. And the social black belt is comprised of 10 truths. You and I have been talking about this for a number of weeks now, and we're up to the fourth truth. And the fourth truth is, most of us, maybe all of us, create a saboteur, a part of us that sabotages, if you will, or ruins things for us out of fear. Now, the two major fears besides dying for humans is the fear of failure and the fear of rejection. There are other fears too, but those are the two biggest fears. And as a result, sometimes we will go out of our way to protect ourselves against those fears. And I'd like to begin tonight, Tom, with your permission, to talk about a college junior, a male who had a crush on this lovely young lady. And he was pretty smitten with her. He thought she was just so attractive and athletic and fun and funny. And boy, would he really like to go out with her. And one day, somehow, he mustered up the courage to ask her out. And to his amazement, she said yes. And he arranged to go out with her. It was a double date, actually. And they were out for, 4 or 5 hours. They went out to dinner. He drove her all over the place, back to his hometown and back to college. And when the date was over, he brought her to her dorm. And they sat down on the steps, and he talked to her another hour and a half. It was like this wonderful night would never end. And he didn't remember how he got home because he thought he was floating on cloud nine because he had such a wonderful time. And then, you know what he did, Tom? He never asked her out again.
Never called her back, right.
Never called her again. And I know this because I am he of which I speak. And you could tell me that that is absolutely crazy behavior. And that's when I would say, let me introduce you to my saboteur. It's not really a separate personality or alter personality. It's me. But my saboteur, historically anyway, has gone out of his way to protect me against failure and against embarrassment and against rejection and against anything that would feel humiliating or emasculating or make me feel like I'm a worthless, inadequate, good for nothing young man, which, according to a famous theorist, we kind of all grow up with feelings of inferiority. So it doesn't take much for us to feel like we're not good enough. And in my case, this woman whose name I won't mention on the air, Diane Schaefer, I just thought she was out of my league. Like, what would she be doing with a schmuck like me? And as I think back, she seemed to be having as good a time as I was having. And I don't know what she ever thought. I mean, we finished up that semester and she transferred to another school. We never spoke again. But I know that I sabotaged any potential opportunity because the fear was I wasn't good enough. I wasn't worthy, and it was just going to hurt me. I mean, I could not pull the trigger a second time, even though all indications were that she had a heck of a lot of fun too. And so the saboteur works very much like that. And I want to share with you some true life stories because people tell me these stories and they don't say, I'm going to introduce you to my saboteur. They just basically tell me what's happened. You tell me when we need to go on the first break. But in the meantime, I want to introduce you to a woman who showed me a picture from first grade. And she said, you'll easily recognize me. I'm the one taking up 2 chairs. I'm the big one on the end. First grade. She was already big. And she recognized that throughout her life, she kept herself there in part because she was very afraid. She didn't know if anybody would really like her. And her weight actually served as a protection. People who liked her now, she knew they liked her for her. They weren't just trying to get their hands on her, or they didn't have ulterior motives if they were a female. They just liked who she was. But at some point in working with me, she decided she was ready. She was going to lose some weight. And she did great. She easily lost 25 to 30 pounds in a short period of time. And then she disappeared from my practice. No sessions. And then she finally came back. And when she came back, not only were her 25 or 30 pounds back on her frame, but an additional 20. What happened? Somebody gave her a compliment. Somebody told her how great she looked. And interestingly, on one hand, Tom, that felt great. On the other hand, it scared her. She was so far out of her comfort zone that the next thing she did was put those pounds back on that body. And it was just the saddest thing that she could not allow herself to just be well, to just be happy in her own skin. Too much fear, too much history, and therefore she had to do whatever she could to trip herself up.
That does raise a few questions, but I tell you what, let's step out for a few minutes, do a quick break, come back and talk about that and perhaps some other stories too. I think this saboteur may be maybe somebody who many of us are familiar with. So
Yeah.
we'll be back in just a few minutes. You're listening to TNC Radio.live. Stay right there.
This info blog on tncradio.live is brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. Everything truck drivers need to know about sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is an issue that affects 1 out of 3 truck drivers. Truck drivers who drive tired may be unaware of how much their lack of sleep affects their driving. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration attributes 2.2% of all driving accident fatalities to drowsy driving. While there's not a law in place that requires truck drivers to get testing for sleep apnea, if you suspect you have sleep apnea, stay with us to learn more about sleep apnea and how it can affect truck drivers. What is sleep apnea? Sleep apnea is a potentially serious sleep disorder that causes you to have pauses in your breathing or take shallow breaths during sleep. It's an extremely common issue that affects millions of people in the United States. If you snore loudly during the night or still feel tired after a full night's rest, you might have sleep apnea. According to the Mayo Clinic, the main types of sleep apnea are obstructive sleep apnea, the more common form that occurs when throat muscles relax, central sleep apnea, which occurs when your brain doesn't send proper signals to the muscles that control breathing, complex sleep apnea syndrome, also known as treatment-emergent central sleep apnea, occurs when someone has both obstructive sleep apnea and central sleep apnea. Symptoms of sleep apnea. According to the Sleep Foundation, all 3 types of sleep apnea share certain common symptoms. Disrupting breathing in which a person's respiration can become labored or even stop for up to a minute at a time. Excessive daytime sleepiness, morning headaches, irritability, limited attention span, or difficulty thinking clearly. Many of these symptoms arise because of poor sleep and decreased oxygen levels that occur as a result of interrupted breathing. Some additional symptoms are connected to obstructive sleep apnea. Snoring, including snoring that's especially loud, and involves gasping, choking, or snorting that may cause a person to briefly wake up. Morning sore throat or dry mouth. Frequent need to wake up to urinate. Causes and treatment options for sleep apnea. Sleep apnea occurs when the airway becomes blocked while sleeping. Here are some common causes of an increase in airway blockage. Being overweight, sedative medication, alcohol, family history of sleep apnea, smoking cigarettes, sleeping on your back, nasal congestion. If you suspect you have sleep apnea, reach out to your doctor to get a treatment plan going. Avoiding treating your sleep apnea can result in losing the ability to operate a commercial motor vehicle. Most often, treatment plans will require you to have a CPAP machine in your truck. The CPAP machine helps pump oxygen to you while you sleep. In addition to using the CPAP machine, your doctor may recommend exercising, losing weight, or using different oral appliances that help hold open your airways. As a truck driver, it's crucial to take care of yourself because trucking is such a difficult and demanding job. At times, it can be challenging to take care of your health. Sleep apnea is a real issue in the trucking industry. We encourage all drivers to be aware of the symptoms and to get help if they suspect they have sleep apnea. This info blog was brought to you by the Truckers Network on app.thetruckersnetwork.net. Do you have the TNCradio.live app? It's free and easy to download. Just go to app.tncradio.live, Google Play, or the App Store. Get access to live streaming radio developed by drivers for drivers. Download the TNCradio.live app today.
Welcome back in TNC Radio.live. We're with Dr. Christopher Cortman. We're talking about building strong minds. So, Dr. Cortman, I wanted to follow up with something that you said in the last segment because I'm not quite sure I followed it, but let me try. You're talking about the saboteur who most of us can relate to and the silly things, and sometimes we look in the mirror and say, why would I do that? Why did I think that? Why did I follow up that way? Or didn't follow up that way in your case. But you also called the saboteur a protector. So I'm a little bit confused. Is the saboteur a good guy or a bad guy?
Yeah, excellent question. The answer is yes.
I knew you were going to say that.
Well, the saboteur is hired by me, and he is me. I am him. I created him to protect me. So, how could he be a good guy and a bad guy at the same time? Well, let's go back to my example. His job when I hired him was to protect me from, rejection, social humiliation, feeling inadequate. So he basically said, here's how I'm going to protect you. I'm going to tell you this girl's out of your league, man. Don't go near her again. I don't know how you asked her out the first time and all that, but you're not going back for another time because I don't want you to be devastated. I'm here to protect you. So he did such a wonderful job protecting me that he helped me blow something that I really wanted. I wanted the opportunity to date that person, and I didn't get to do that because the saboteur was protecting me. And again, so many illustrations from my practice. I'm thinking of a man who was abused by a priest and sexually when he was a boy. And I can think of a number of ways that he sabotaged himself. One of those ways was he was heading up the corporate ladder, as it was, and I believe it was with some kind of because he didn't like that kind of attention. People were going to be looking at him. And the same thing was true when there was the opportunity to bring a lawsuit against the church. He settled out of court for over $100,000 less than he would have been awarded if he would be willing to testify in court. But he didn't want to testify in court because that would mean people would look at him and know that he was molested by the priest. Just people looking at him, paying attention to him, made him feel so uncomfortable that his saboteur said, I am not going to let that happen to you, boss. No worries. We're going to settle out of court. You're not testifying. I'm not going to let you accept this promotion. Let's stay here where it's safe. The saboteur opts for safety. I mean, how many of you guys out there at one point in your lives were athletes? Well, if you're an athlete, there's almost always fear. Fear of what? Fear of failure, fear of defeat, fear of losing. I can remember playing high school baseball. When I was in chemistry class, I just think about this afternoon's game and I would get the anxiety going. It was a performance anxiety. What if I strike out? What if I make an error? What if we lose? And that's normal to have that. But the saboteur finds a way to protect you, and sometimes by even feigning injury or making something worse than it really is, so you don't have to play. Because if you don't play, you don't lose. There was a young man who once said very honestly to his therapist, if I don't try, then if I fail, I didn't try. But if I try and I fail, that's on me. I tried and I failed. He learned at a very young age that what he had to do to protect himself sometimes was to not even try. Not give his best, because that way
So that fear of trying and failing is greater than not trying and failing.
Yeah, well, the fear is to fail, right?
Right.
And so if I never tried, I could say, yeah, I didn't even try.
Right.
You know, that I could have done better, but I didn't care. I didn't try. I didn't give it my best. You know, a young lady once, and this is another true story, and also a young lady who was abused as a child. So her self-esteem was very low, and she was playing volleyball. And she was a good volleyball player. And her junior year of high school, the team voted her most valuable player. And she's talking to me as an adult. So this was years ago. And she said, I could not abide that title of valuable, let alone most valuable. I was so uncomfortable with that. She said, I never hit another ball well. And I went from the best player on the team to playing poorly to sitting the bench for the rest of my high school career. How does the best player on the team sit the bench? And the answer is when they're so freaked out that they stop playing well. She sabotaged herself.
How do you recognize that you're doing this?
Well, that's a really good question, because sometimes we have to do it in order to say, what in the heck just happened?
Right.
How did I have a very good friend, and hopefully he's not listening to the show tonight. But this poor guy, he was a young licensed physician and a sweet man, and he married this very attractive lady with 2 kids. And 6 months after he married her, just being the good guy that he was, he offered to adopt her children. And that was just a very kind thing and a way to reassure her, your kids are my kids. This is a family. We're in this together. But she saw an opportunity to take advantage of him, and she divorced him very shortly thereafter, and he was on the hook for those 2 kids until they were 18. I mean, these kids were like 8 and 10 years old.
Wow.
And he was going to have to pay for them for the next 10 years. And, that totally rocked his world, needless to say. And his attorney said, look, she can keep on coming after you. Every time you make more money, she can come after you for more child support. I recommend that you skip town, go to another state where it's hard to get you. So the guy changes his entire life, moves to another state far away. And something else that he didn't realize he was doing to protect himself, Tom. He sabotaged every relationship after that for one stupid reason or another. And just to put this into perspective, this was like, I don't know, 38, 40 years ago. He has not remarried. And this is a lonely chap. He's had some lovely ladies he's been with, and for one reason or another, he doesn't stay with them. He doesn't, and it's been, and I'm actually answering your question at the same time telling you the story. It was completely unbeknownst to him until I pointed it out. But this is not random. This is you protecting you. No one's ever going to do that to you again. But guess what? You're going to be lonely. You're going to be really self-protected. No one will take your money again.
Right.
You're going to die with millions of dollars, but you're going to die alone and lonely and sad because you're protecting yourself instead of loving again. So what do we do with that, right? I mean, what do we do with an insight like that? Well, we have to be aware.
That's a great question, and let's discuss that when we come back.
After the break.
After the break, TNCRadio.live. Stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Dr. Christopher Cortman, and now for the Mental Health Minute. I was asked this week to speak to a group on bullying. And this is a group of kids from a lower socioeconomic status part of town. And I want to ask them, what is bullying? Where does bullying come from? How does it happen? Do you bully? Do you get bullied? How does this work? Well, we have a lot of research on bullying by now. And one of the things we understand is that people who are bullied often bully themselves. And we know that the bully gets hurt, according to research, and so does the one who's bullied, and so do the bystanders. Everyone who witnesses a bullying event ends up paying a price for it. So if you hang around me, you hear that behavior is purposeful. Everything we do, we get something from, or we wouldn't do it. So why do people bully? Well, it's simple. Very often we bully because we don't feel good about self. And we feel that by putting somebody else down, it helps to elevate ourselves. It makes me feel better about me by subjugating somebody else. So what do we do with that? As soon as we understand that a child has issues with that, we want to interfere, we want to intercede, because we understand that they have some deep-rooted issues that they don't feel good about self. And we want to help them to promote self in other ways. According to the great psychologist Dr. Sid Simon, when a person likes themselves, two things are true. Number one, they don't do things to hurt themselves. And number two, they don't do things to hurt other people.
TNCRadio.live, your commercial driver navigation station.
Welcome back in TNC Radio.live. This is Building Strong Minds with Dr. Christopher Cortman. I'm Tom Kelly, and we're talking about the social black belt. And tonight we're talking about the saboteur that lives within us, who tries to both protect us and occasionally cause us harm while trying to protect us, because we avoid one thing to protect us from failure, from a lot of different things. Now, earlier you were talking about the things that people fear the most. And I'm reminded of Jerry Seinfeld, who pointed out that the number two fear that people have is dying, and the number one fear that people have is public speaking. So he was saying that people would rather be in the box than the guy talking about the guy.
The guy eulogizing, correct. Yeah, and any of us who've ever had that fear of public speaking find that joke of his, that observation, very, very funny, because it feels like that's true. I'd rather be dead in the box than the one talking about the poor guy in the box. And fear of public speaking, of course, it is the same thing. It's a fear of failure. It's a fear of rejection. It's, what is it we're afraid of if we're up there speaking? Someone's going to laugh at us. Someone's going to say that was stupid, that was boring. They're going to look at us funny. We're going to shake up there like a leaf on a tree. Our fears fall back. Even public speaking falls back to, fear of rejection, fear of inadequacy, fear of failure. It's all they're all clustered together as the things that people are most afraid of, besides dying, or maybe not besides dying, but. We were talking about how in the world can we be aware of that? And sometimes we have to have it pointed out to us that you had a perfectly good opportunity for a scholarship, and then you stopped going after it. What was going on there? Or sometimes people, This just happened with a 14-year-old girl who's had social struggles, throughout her young life, and transferred to a new school, small-time school, private school, and meets some girls, meets some friends, and the friends are good to her, they're nice to her, and then she says, I don't like them. What do you mean you don't like them? What's wrong with them? Oh, nothing, they're really nice. Why don't you like them? She didn't have a good reason, but I'll guarantee it, Tom, she's sabotaging. She's more comfortable in her comfort zone, thinking of herself as inadequate, as basically friendless. It's what she wants the most and is most afraid of. When she has the opportunity, she doesn't go through with it. She finds a way, and think about it this way. I fired them before they could fire me. That's what was going on with my friend before, right? Before the girl could ever do that to him, he would find a way to get out of the relationship. And that way, you're sparing yourself from rejection.
I'm familiar with this with somebody who I hope, like you, isn't actually listening tonight, but a close friend of mine who, when we were college age, we were big time into baseball, and he got a call. I don't know how he was picked out of all this, but the Atlanta Braves were coming to town, and they wanted him to try out. I was very excited all day long. I sat by the phone waiting for him to call and tell me how it went. Finally, I couldn't stand it anymore. I called him at 5 p.m. and said, well, tell me, what happened? And he said, what happened with what? I said, the tryout with the Braves. Oh, yeah, that. I overslept. I didn't go.
That is exactly what I'm talking about. That's just a wonderful illustration. But you know what he felt? And you know this. You know what he felt by oversleeping? Relief. He felt relief.
Yeah, maybe
because he didn't have.
I'm still mad at him. I'm still mad.
yeah, of course. Because who wouldn't want that opportunity if you're a baseball nut? I would have been the Yankee shortstop had I not been switched at birth with Derek Jeter.
Of course, yes.
I was supposed to be, a Hall of Fame shortstop, and he was supposed to be an underpaid psychologist, and somehow we're living each other's lives. So, well, he did well with my life. I can't complain.
Yeah, he did all right.
He did all right.
And you did all right with his.
But your friend didn't do well, and he didn't do well at that moment because he was protecting himself. His saboteur dominated that day and said, we're sleeping. We're not getting up for that because we're going to go down there and maybe make a fool out of ourselves. What if we don't get selected? Then I have to tell everybody I didn't make it? Yeah, I'm not doing that. On some level, that's what happened.
Is this something, though? I mean, I feel like over time, this is something that perhaps as you recognize it and as you gain wisdom in life, you're suddenly able to say, I did try that one time. I did show, I'll change the story. So he shows up and it didn't work out. But when you're 60 years old and you say, I did that when I was 20, it doesn't seem like failure. People are like, wow, you got to try out with the Braves. That's really cool. Mm-hmm. Sorry it didn't work out for you.
Mm-hmm. And that's because you have, the advantage of wisdom of the years at that point, which you don't have when you're 22.
Yeah, right.
What you have is the fear of what would happen if I don't make it. And the answer to that is nothing. Life will continue as it did yesterday. You just won't be playing for the Braves. Or maybe you could try out elsewhere. Or maybe they tell you, keep working out, kid. There's a chance. I want to see another 3 miles per hour on your fastball or something.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
But that's an excellent illustration. That was the saboteur at work. Because if the Braves said, you don't have to try out, we know about you and we want to sign you, he would have been there.
Right. Wow.
So this is a story that has thousands of different versions to it. And, people have been sent to psychologists because they have some kind of a behavioral issue at work. One guy was late every day, a brilliant guy, but he couldn't seem to get to work on time. And one of the questions I was asked him is, well, how long does it take you to get to work? And he said, oh, about a half hour. And what time do you have to be there? And he said, 9 o'clock. Okay. So what time do you leave? And he says, 8:40. Wait a minute. You're a pretty bright guy. 8:40, that's 20 minutes to 9, and it takes a half hour. It didn't even occur to the guy. You're doing this. You're giving yourself 20 minutes to drive a 30-minute drive. What are you doing? What's behind that? I mean, there's thousands of variations of the same story. And the story continues to be, I'm so afraid that something's not going to go well that I just can't bring myself to do it. I don't show. One way or another, I fail to show up. This is probably where you're going to tell me we're going to get a break.
This is a good time for a break. Let's take a break now. And the question when I come back is, all right, I see the saboteur now. What do I do about it?
Right.
So, all right, we'll ask that question when we come back here in just a moment. You're listening to TNC Radio.live. Stay tuned.
This blog on TNC Radio is brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. The 5 best truck stops in America. Truck drivers spend days, sometimes weeks, out on the road. Sometimes taking a break at a nice truck stop's a great way to relax and take your mind off driving. There are many truck stops across the United States, but we listed the 5 best truck stops that every trucker needs to stop and experience. Little America, Wyoming. The Little America Truck Stop is located in Little America, Wyoming. It's a mini-chain truck stop with several locations throughout the country for truckers to enjoy. Little America offers a wide variety of services to truck drivers. Some of the services include service truck roadside repair, tire repair, new tires, wheel seals, oil changes, water pumps, brakes, courtesy property shuttle, AC repairs, belts, DOT inspections, and trailer tarp installation. Iowa 80, Walcott, Iowa. Iowa 80 is a place where truckers want to stop. It's the world's largest truck stop, and it's filled with tons of activities and tourist attractions. Truck drivers could stop and enjoy a nice meal, watch a movie, or stop by the trucking museum. Iowa 80 also has a full range of truck services and amenities. Some of the services and amenities include CAT scale, chiropractor, convenience store, interstate dental, Dogomat, fuel center, laundry facility, library, travel service center, truckomat, and a workout room. South of the border, Hammers, South Carolina. Pedro's Truck Stop, also known as Porky's, located in Hammers, South Carolina, is a world-famous roadside attraction for tourists and truck drivers. Pedro's filled with many different activities, unique foods and shopping. It also offers truck drivers supplies, showers, a trucker's lounge, and 24/7 fresh hot coffee. Trails Travel Center, Albert Lee, Minnesota. Trails Travel Center is everything a truck driver needs and amazing food. Some of the Trails Travel Center's food options are a tavern, Cold Stone Creamery, Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, and McDonald's. Truckers can also stop and shop heavy-duty truck parts or chrome parts. Trails Travel Center also has a truck service that offers drivers wash services, tire services, wheel alignments, and suspension repair. Jubitz, Portland, Oregon. Jubitz is a family-owned truck stop and boasts of being the world's classiest truck stop. They were also recently named the second-best rest stop in America. Drivers can enjoy a 24-hour full-service Cascade Grill restaurant, a 100-room hotel, movie theater, barber shop, and more. Jubitz also has a truck service center and is committed to providing truck drivers the best tires, truck maintenance, and truck repair. Some of their services include engine diagnostics, oil change, DOT inspection, glass replacement, metal fabrication, welding, tires, tire service, and airbags. Plus, brake service, truck trailer alignment, shock absorbers, air conditioning maintenance, electrical diagnostics, battery service, suspension repair, electronic logging devices, lubricant service, APU installation, and service. This infoblog was brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net.
TNCRadio.live, your commercial driver navigation station. Welcome back in TNC Radio.live. Final segment of tonight's Building Strong Minds with Dr. Christopher Cortman. I'm Tom Kelly. So, Dr. Chris, we've been talking about the saboteur. I can see him now. I can remember when he showed up and issues that he's caused, but I don't know if I recognize him in the moment. What do we do with this information now that we have it?
Sometimes I think, Tom, what we want to do is ask myself, when I didn't get the desired outcome, what happened here? If it's at the end of a football game and you're a fan, you usually have 3 or 4 theories on what went wrong as to why your team lost. But if you're a performer, or if you're someone who does anything and you didn't get your desired outcome, it's okay to ask yourself, what happened? And was it something within my control? Did I do my very best? Did I put it all out there? Did I leave it on the field, as they say? And sometimes the answer to that is no. And like in your friend's case, if you grow up a sports nut, like some of us, you have a chance to go out and try out for a major league team, that's the possibility of your dream coming true. What happened that I overslept? There's no way I'm going to oversleep, because that's what my whole life has been about to that point, perhaps. Well, the answer is, yeah, I'm really afraid I might not make it. And again, if I didn't show up, if I didn't go, I just overslept. But if I go and I don't make it, I failed. I failed. They didn't want me. They cut me. They rejected me. So I got to go back to, well, what if that does happen? And the answer to that is it does happen. Who among us has not been broken up with? Who among us did not get the raise or the promotion or the job we wanted? How many of us are doing exactly what we always fantasized we'd be doing? And, how many of us have everything going the way we wanted it to go in our lives? And the answer is very few, if anybody. Show me someone who's never failed, and I'll show you someone who hasn't tried a lot of different things. You're living in your comfort zone. So what do we want to do with that? I think one of the things we want to do right away is to recognize that I am afraid of these things and that my fears are normal. And when do fears stop being normal? And the answer to that is when they're too great, or they interfere with my life in some way. If you have a fear of public speaking, and as a result of that, you don't go for the promotion you're offered, that's clinical. That's a problem. That's too much. If you say, of course I'm going to accept the promotion, but I got to work on being more comfortable with my public speaking because I have fear about that. That's normal. And then we work on that. And what about the saboteur? Well, here's the cool thing. I can rethink anything and everything as an adult. And I get to say to myself, I won't be sabotaging my efforts ever again. What I want from my formerly, the person formerly known as the saboteur, I want to change his name and change his job description. He's not going to protect me by tripping me up so I don't show up for tryouts. He's going to be picking me up should I fall, dusting me off and saying, good job, man, go back in there. Or we're going to work even harder this time. Or, hey, there were 85 beautiful girls that went out for and they only took 12. You gave it a great shot. We have options. We can go out for something else. Or we can work really hard and try next year. But I'm not going to sabotage and say you're not even going to the tryouts. What chance do you have? You don't look like those girls. You don't have a prayer. No, that we call that out now. We every one of us listening to the show, if we've ever had any problem with a saboteur, we claim that saboteur as me. He is me. He's a part of me. And I'm changing his job description to encourager. I'm changing his friendship. He's now the best friend who says, you go in there and you fight for what you believe and you assert yourself where it's necessary and you talk to the vice president about your issue. And you do what you have to do, because we're not tripping you up anymore with your fear of failure and rejection. We're encouraging you and telling you in the real world, it doesn't always go the way you want it to, but it's not going to be because we didn't try. It's going to be we did try and we learned a lot of good things. You always learn when you try. You know, Tom, I had the chance to talk to some guys who used to be NFL stars. One of the guys I remember a conversation with is a retired linebacker for the Buffalo Bills named Darryl Talley. And Darryl really liked the Social Black Belt program, by the way. And we got to talking, and I said, okay, we got to talk about those 4 Super Bowls. As anybody who's been watching the NFL for a while knows, there were 4 straight Super Bowls that Buffalo went to and lost. And he told me something that I will never forget. He said, sure, we wanted to win those games, but I want you to know there are no losers in a Super Bowl. One team scores more points than the other, but it's an absolute thrill to have that opportunity. And I had 4 opportunities to play in that game, and that was fantastic. It's like he was no loser. He was no loser at all. You know, he probably played 13, 14 years in the league, and he was a Pro Bowler and, you know, so on and so forth. He was no loser. And he was saying, here's how we look at that. And I said, you know, I got to ask you about Scott Norwood. Scott Norwood was the field goal kicker who missed the 41-yard field goal in their very first Super Bowl against the Giants. If he makes it, Buffalo wins the Super Bowl, and maybe another 1 or 2 along the way. But he missed it, and they lost 4 straight. I said, how do you feel about Scott? Is there any... He goes, we love Scott. He's like, he was really quick to say, no resentment there. No woulda, coulda, shoulda stuff. Just a beautiful attitude. And you knew right away that Darryl Talley was a winner. And you knew that by his attitude. It's like, yeah, you're not going to win everything in life, but you got to go to 4 Super Bowls, man. You're not a loser. You're a winner.
Yeah, I mean, the percentage of football players, you know, who start in high school or junior high or even grade school who end up playing in the Super Bowl is very, very, very small.
Yeah, and how many went 4 straight times?
Yeah,
not many.
Exactly. Not many. So we recognize our saboteur. We change the saboteur's job description and take ownership of the saboteur. Is that right?
We do, and we make it okay to try and to lose. We make it okay to try and to fail, and then we learn. We learn from the failures and disappointments. I mean. There's a couple of people, I don't know how much time we have, but there's a couple of people in history that I heard of who are the most successful people you could think of. One is Abraham Lincoln, and the other one is Michael Jordan. And both of them had numerous failures along the way, and they should have quit. If they were going to fear that failure, if they were going to fear rejection and defeat, they should have quit along the way. I don't know how many elections Lincoln lost, but it was something like 7 different times he tried out for office and lost. And he's still widely considered the greatest president we've had. And the same thing with Gordon. He did a wonderful Nike ad years ago about how he's missed over 9,000 shots in his career, and 29 different times with the game on the line, he took the last shot and missed, and on and on and on. And he goes, but all those failures, that's what made me a success, because he never quit. Exactly. He kept on improving himself, reinventing himself, keep trying.
And did amazing. And matter of fact, he didn't even make his high school team. He was the equipment manager.
I was going to say that he was cut from his high school team sophomore year, and he went on to be the greatest player ever. Those two things don't usually go in the same paragraph, but it's absolutely true.
Right. All right. Hey, we're just about out of time. How can people reach you, learn more about you, find your books, all that good stuff?
srqshrink.com. They can find me. Feel free to look up my mental health minutes on TikTok, which is TikTok Shrink or Dr. Christopher Cortman. There are books out there to order if anyone's interested, and they can always just call me, text me, say hello. Happy to anybody, and always glad to be on the show. So thank you for another good week, Tom.
It's been our pleasure. Stay tuned. Coming up next, it's Hope Zavara with the Driver Podcast, and then TFC Global, always helping people, drivers down life's highways as they come across things in their lives that require additional consideration. All of that right